are listening to the GIMP Show Podcast, episode 25.
Welcome to the GIMP Show Podcast, an entertaining and informative show for the special needs community. And now your hosts. Your hosts have driven more miles than Thelma and Louise, Mike Bergson and Tim Wambach.
You are listening to the GIMP Show Podcast. What does GIMP stand for? Gifted,
intelligent,
motivating,
people.
We are a show for the special needs community, people with disabilities, parents, caregivers, and advocates. I'm Tim Wambach.
And I'm Mike Bergson.
Together we are
Handicap THIS,
a two-man stage show that travels the country spreading awareness. Mike, we are back in the studio. The podcast levels are high today.
Yes, we are high. Not us, the levels.
Yeah, we're not in Denver. We're not in the Mile High City.
Not yet, anyway. But it's good to be back in the studio.
Yeah, Mike, we've been having fun. We took a little bit of not the iTunes. We haven't taken a hiatus, but for us, we've taken a little recording hiatus.
Yes.
The holidays.
A
and
holiday
everything.
hiatus.
A holiday hiatus. So, Mike, we've been doing this for a little while now, and now we're starting to get in our rhythm. We're starting
to
get
some steam, get into the groove, if you will.
Yeah, and we're starting to interview people, and it might be snowing outside, but it feels warm and toasty inside. And today we have just a very special guest, someone that I've known for quite a long time. I'm proud to call him my friend. His name is Brian R. King. He is LCSW. He is the best-selling author of 5 books, an engaging public speaker, and a life coach. He's a cancer survivor, adult with dyslexia, ADHD, and he is the father of 3 sons on the autism spectrum. Despite these hurdles, Brian has emerged a master at turning problems into possibilities. Brian knows success in life has nothing to do with circumstances and everything to do with strategy. Brian's plan is to start a ripple effect that helps create a better, more accepting and respectful society. He knows it only takes small shifts to move mountains. His most recent book, Perfect Moments in Relationships, Lessons in Connection for Work, Family, Love, and Life, was a #1 bestseller on Amazon.com. I could probably go on a little bit longer, but I think we should probably pull the plug on that, Mike. Don't you think?
Yes, I agree as well.
Because we want to get to the guy himself. Brian, thank you for being on our podcast today.
Thank you very much.
Tim, Mike, it is an absolute pleasure.
We are excited to have you on. And I mean, we just kind of, read your bio, obviously, and you've done a lot of amazing things. And obviously, you and I have known each other for over a decade. We met at a Jack Canfield conference way back when in Santa Barbara. And, the things that you've done since then have really been amazing.
What can I say? My boys have raised me into the parent they need me to be.
Well, let's talk about that. So you said that you have 3 boys that are on the autism spectrum. What are some of the challenges that you've had raising your boys?
Well, they have ADHD as well, which is just the cherry on top of the special needs sundae. And when the challenges that they've had primarily are social, which is expected with either ADHD or the autism spectrum challenges. Very shy, very withdrawn, very self-conscious. When they get into social situations, they either totally clam up or they kind of fumble their way through because the social instincts are just lacking, where the average person might learn through osmosis or through the modeling of their peers. Kids on the spectrum need to be taught this stuff deliberately, like they were learning any other class, whether it be, math, science, or whatever. You have to sit down with them and say, this is what you do. This is why you do it. Now let's practice doing it. And one thing that I found out even about myself as an adult with a lot of these challenges is, even though we become more proficient at it and it seems smoother, it does not become second nature. It's nothing that ever gets internalized to the point where you can do it without thinking. even today, all of my socialization is very intentional, very deliberate. So even though I can appear competent, it's a heck of a lot of work, and sometimes it's exhausting.
I bet.
Does your situation yourself having ADHD, like, did that help you with your kids, like explaining, not explaining to your kids, but dealing with your kids and stuff like that?
Oh, it absolutely does. More so along the lines of advocacy, because when I have to talk to their teachers or anybody else that works with them, I can speak the language. I can explain exactly what the hiccup is, why there's this gap between how smart they appear to be and then what they're ultimately able to produce. And I'm not spinning from textbook knowledge. I'm saying, hey, this is what it feels like. This is the experience. This is how you need to accommodate it if you want my child to succeed. And having it myself gives me a little bit more credibility, of course, to the teacher that's teachable.
Sure.
Not all of them are allowed to allow themselves to look past their degrees enough to see that they too have something to learn. And one thing I've learned the most is patience. When I look back at my childhood, I drove my parents nuts. I was this big ball of hyperactivity, of impulsivity, of socially awkward moments that my mother always had to apologize for. So when I see my kids doing that, and I even told my oldest son this once, I said, how can I punish you for something I've done? That's hypocrisy. What I can do is instill upon you the lesson I learned in the hope that you'll take that with you and improve in the future.
Exactly. So now, with your experiences with teachers, you said something important there about, they need to be teachable and be willing to learn as well. Mike and I definitely
Amen.
have seen that many times. And, and you even mentioned almost exactly what we talk about, the textbook, they go by the textbook. Well, you know what? The textbook is, it's not
You can only do so much with it.
exactly. So what are some ways that you've enabled teachers to maybe be more open-minded and more teachable when it comes to, teaching your students or your kids?
Well, one thing right off the bat is I make it very clear to them that I'm their asset, not their adversary. Because there are a lot of parents that begin the teacher parent relationship with a lecture. Hey, this is how the last year's parents screwed up, and I don't want to see that again with you. And that gets them nowhere.
Right.
As opposed to going in and shaking their hand and saying, hey, how's it going? Is there anything I can do to support you? You know, Asking for regular email interaction, because your tone with the teacher needs to be compassionate. Because anybody who knows a teacher nowadays knows that the paperwork has virtually doubled. They've got so much nonsense they need to do. There's one of my friends that's a teacher, and she goes from school to Starbucks and stays there until like 11 or midnight just doing her schoolwork before she goes home.
Wow.
And this is every day. And there are people that are down her neck saying, you don't accommodate my child properly, and you don't do this, and you don't do that. Well, it's not because she's superwoman and has just decided not to use her powers today. It's because she's overwhelmed. So the more you can show some compassion to a very overworked person, the more that person will single out your child in a positive way,
That's great.
because there's a natural reciprocity. The people that take care of you, you naturally want to take care of. So you'll see things improve by being a decent human being than you will than by being a pain in the butt.
That's
You know?
awesome. Yeah, that's true.
Wow.
Because what you said, you don't want to be the teacher's adversary. You want to be work together as a team so you get the best results.
Right.
Absolutely.
And what, like, when you go out and speak, because you go out and talk about advocacy, what's your like major uh what's your major point? Like, what's your like what's your jump what's your jumping off point? Like, what's your like message?
my overall message is that we're in it together. We need to totally remove the power struggle that is inherent in the system. Because even today, classrooms are mini dictatorships. Teachers say student do. Well, we know that a lot of kids that have problems with impulsivity, problems with insecurity, they don't want to feel powerless. So when you put them in a situation where you remove their choices, there are some of our kiddos that just say, I'll show you. They're
Right.
talking out of turn, they're teasing other students around them, they're flat out refusing to do their work because they're trying to prove that they can make choices in their own life.
Right.
And you basically don't give them many opportunities to make positive decisions. They're just left with opposing your demand for absolute authority. So what I tell the teachers are, you need to create win-win partnerships with these kids. You need to be their ally and not just somebody who's barking orders at them all day. And the teachers that have really taken that to heart have really seen these kids open up, take more risks, be more vulnerable, because the teacher's no longer just there to point out their mistakes. The teacher's there to conspire for their success. And that little piece alone can shift the entire power and the feeling of the classroom environment.
Exactly. Like I've had that situation before where like when I was in school, they would tell me like what I had to do, and it was a very adversarial. It was a very adversarial. I wouldn't say relationship, but a very adversarial feeling with the room. And then like some teachers would get it, and it would be like a give and take. And I think it's important because the more you give and take, and the more like choices that you give your kids, and the more choices that they seem to have, the more willingness they will to kind of interact with that in the class or in whatever the social situation might be. Because if you cut them off and if you box them in, all they're gonna want to do is break out of that box. So you're doing like you're doing the opposite of what you want them to do. You want them to follow the rules, but the best way for them to follow the rules is start that dialogue with them, start that relationship with them, and just like treat them as a person, don't treat them as a diagnosis.
Amen to that. One thing I want to add too, Mike, which is really important, is when our kids have a lot of challenges, one of the best things that they can learn how to be is a resourceful problem solver, because they need to use more tools than anybody else could imagine just to accomplish the same outcomes. So adults constantly swooping in and rescuing them and creating accommodations that maybe some of these kids don't even know exist in their IEP or their 504 plans, let alone how to access them and how to use them. So I'm all for collaborative problem solving, where it's not that, okay, you need to figure out how to solve this problem. It's how can we solve this problem? So you learn problem identification, problem solving within a partnership. Because guess what? When our kids go out into the world, they're going to be utilizing a personal network of people that don't have the challenges they do. Because it's these recruits that are going to help them live their life fully. I'm surrounded by people that check in with me daily to help me solve the problems I need to and accomplish the goals I need to. Some of them I'm paying for it because it's business related and they're really earning their money. And some of them are just close friends that we've developed a reciprocal camaraderie where I support them in their areas of challenge, they support me in mine, and we succeed together.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's all about reciprocation, and it's all about creating that relationship, even if you are, even if it is a business relationship. Because a lot of the business relationships that I have not that I'm older, like become personal relationships because you want to help people you want to help people that help you. You don't want it to be a one. You don't want it to be a one-way street. You want to feel like you're helping them help themselves because you feel like a more like a more you feel like a more intricate member of the relationship if you bring something to the relationship as well. They're not just helping you because you have some sort of handicap or you have some sort of issue and they're coming to your rescue. No, you're working on something together. Like me and Tim, we're working on something together. He's not just here because I can't do stuff for myself.
Right. Now, Brian, you also are a life coach, and I wanted to kind of ask you a few questions about that. And the seem like, who are some of you, like, your clients? Not saying like what are their names, but like who are some of the
Tell
people?
us who they are.
Tell, what kind of, if people are looking for help, who usually are those people that are contacting you?
The people that find me primarily are the parents that have kids in the K through 12 and also in the early college years. The kids that they've tried to accommodate, they've had all the meetings, they've seen all the professionals, and still can't get the results they want, especially in the social area. So they'll contact me and I will teach them how to be their child's coach.
Oh, wow, that's
Because,
great.
yeah, because they don't need to, the kid doesn't need to talk to me and the kid knows it. The kid's up their eyeballs in professionals, but they're always going to have their parents.
Right.
So that relationship is absolutely necessary for it to be functional and beneficial. So I teach them how to incorporate the necessary strategies within their relationship with their child. And that's how they get the results they're looking for. And the thing that I'm really excited about now is I'm starting to get calls from professionals
There you go.
that have ADHD and they've finally realized it and they're struggling. They're not doing as well at their job as they could. And so I'm helping them learn to turn their scatter into their superpower so that they can really reach their potential there. And it's really exciting to work with those folks.
Well, I bet, and then that's where you really can input some change when you're helping those professionals, because they have people that they're going to be affecting because as a result of their work with you.
Right, and they're using you're helping them turn their disadvantage into an advantage. So you're teaching them how to help themselves, and then they can teach the professional that they work with. So it's a really like symbiotic relationship. The ripple effect, if you will, from your bio.
Oh, absolutely. It could, because one thing you realize, and Tim, you mentioned this at the offset of this part of the conversation, is you realize this person doesn't live in a vacuum. They live in a community, they live in a family, and sometimes in a marriage or a dating partnership. And you know that what you teach them is going to cause that ripple effect and impact everybody that they relate to. And that that prospect is exciting. That's truly how you affect the world. Is you help some person improve their life so dramatically that it creates a shift in everybody around them.
Right. It's kind of like, leaders don't have followers. Leaders create leaders. That's the true measure of a leader, is creating other leaders. Now, I think what the philosophy that you have, and by helping the parent, I think that's genius, and that I think that really speaks to your level of getting to the root of the problem. And like you said, these kids, that they don't need another professional. They've got that covered.
The kids know what they're doing to a point. Like I'm 25. I still need help talking to my parents. Like, not well. Let me say that better. There's some issues where I'm like, okay, how do I explain this? how do I explain my issue in a language that they can understand? Like I still find that happening. Do you find do you find that you have to do that? Like you're kind of like, for like a better word, you're kind of not the interpreter, but you were kind of like the go between. You're kind of like, okay, you talk to the parent and you're able to talk because you're a parent yourself, and you're able to kind of talk the language of the parent. Is that your strategy?
Yeah, I'm often referred to as the translator
Yeah,
because I wear so many hats. I'm a parent, I'm a professional, I have my licensed clinical social worker, and I also have these challenges. So I can relate as a professional, as a parent, and as a person with it. So there are so many bridges that I can help gap by virtue of that.
right. Because I think you're like, I think that's the most important thing, and I think that people like you, and that we need more people like you, and you're creating more people like you through your programs, because that's what we need. We need translators, we need interpreters, we need that kind of middleman, if you will.
Right now, here's a question. Let's say that someone's listening to this podcast right now, and they're a parent, and they just don't know where to start. What advice would you give them?
Well, it's real easy. Email me and ask a question, you know, because as you know, Tim, I put a lot of free content out there
Absolutely.
because I know that people's ability to access the information they need exists on a continuum. There are some that are simply struggling, and then there are some that have greater means. And I have something for all those different people, but I will absolutely not leave somebody swinging in the wind. If they need to know where to start, they need to be connected with a professional or with a resource. I will do my utmost to send them on the yellow brick road because, in a lot of ways, sometimes they just need to take one piece of action to feel empowered, as opposed to sitting there saying, I don't know what to do, I don't know where to start, and feeling helpless. Anything to get them moving is helpful.
Right. I think, yeah, a lot of times, these parents too are feeling overwhelmed, and, that because of the overwhelm, it's hard to start, or it's hard to do certain things.
Yeah, they might not even know how to ask a question. Like, they might have a problem. They might not even be able to formulate a question in their head. They might not be able to put it into words. But with your free content, like if they go onto your website, they might see it might click for them.
Yeah, and it's a way too for you to, build a relationship with people without necessarily having to be there, right? They're reading your stuff or watching your videos or what have you, and then they start understanding who Brian is, and they're like, "Oh my God, I really like and trust this guy. I want to know more."
And like you were saying, Mike, sometimes they don't know how to formulate a question. Sometimes I'll just say to them, tell me your story. And they'll give me a synopsis of everything that's going wrong. And within that, I'll see something that I have a solution for.
That's great.
And I'll
Yeah.
say, have you tried this? Have you looked at this resource? Have you considered that? And often that gives them enough clarity, someplace where they can do something new that really feels like they have some hope again.
Right, and from your perspective, the more people you help, then you have a more knowledge bank to help other people as well.
Yeah, because the more stories you hear from other people, the more like stories you can use to help other clients, and maybe even help yourself. Like,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just yesterday, I was talking to a client who turned me onto a resource I didn't know existed. And he asked me some questions, and I'm like, oh, I got something for that too. So we're educating each other. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm doing research every single day because there's always questions coming across your desk that challenge you to make your knowledge more comprehensive, to explore new resources. So that's exciting too. It's really hard to get bored when you're in this work
yeah,
because there is just so much always coming out that you need to take in.
I'm doing research without knowing that I'm doing research. Like that's what I.
All going to all the different doctors you have to go to.
No, I didn't mean like talking to people, like
Oh, right, sure.
just having interaction with people and like being like, okay, I see what they're. This is a new thing that I had to think about. This is a new thing I had to consider. So that I had to sit and think, and all the doctors I go to do.
Now, one thing that we haven't really talked about at all, Brian, that I think at least I think could offer some value to some of our listeners out there is that you're a cancer survivor and someone that had cancer as a teenager. If I remember correctly, why don't you kind of share a little bit about that aspect of you and how that can help others?
Well, I was diagnosed with testicular cancer 3 weeks shy of graduating from high school. So I went in the hospital for 3 days, had the tumor removed, was trying to study for my finals while under the influence of morphine, which I tell you is not an easy feat. And
I tried to do things under morphine too. It's fun, but it doesn't really help you.
oh yeah, everything in moderation and in the right context. Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really difficult to get through that time because I was kind of hanging in limbo. They took out the tumor and they said, "Hey, okay, go graduate high school, get on with your life. We think we got it all, so on and so forth." A month after I graduated, it was early July. I went back for the follow-up blood test, make sure everything was cool, and I got a phone call from the doctor a couple days later saying, "Man, we think the lab screwed up because these numbers are way too high. We want you to go back and get another blood test." So I went and got another blood test, and the numbers were even higher,
Oh,
which basically told them that the cancer was spreading like wildfire, and I had to get to the hospital by the next morning to start chemotherapy. So that's how I spent my summer after graduation, losing my hair, throwing up, losing my friends because they couldn't handle it. I was the class clown. I was the one who was always elevating their moods. Now all of a sudden, I was looking helpless and sick, and I didn't look anything like they remembered, and they were scared, so they backed off. So that
right.
was a really difficult time for me where I felt like I'd been abandoned. I felt like the universe had done me wrong, and I had so much anger for so long. And when I finally decided I didn't want to live like that anymore, I connected with a social worker. And he was one of the most compassionate men I'd ever met, and it was through that process of healing and realizing that I could incorporate this experience into something that I could use instead of feeling like a victim of it. And when I was able to make that transition, I came through life essentially fearless. Whenever the fear kind of comes up now, I say to myself, I survived cancer. What the heck do I have to be afraid of?
I was just gonna say, I was just gonna ask you that. Like,
Now, didn't the doctors say that you wouldn't be able to do something or that
Yeah, they said that I probably wouldn't have kids because as an 18-year-old, they were encouraging me to freeze my sperm so that I could have kids at some point. And I said, "Are you kidding me? I'm not thinking about kids. I just want to live. Just give me the chemo and just kill the cancer." So they told me I probably wouldn't have kids because either the chemo would have eliminated the count or significantly knocked it down. And lo and behold, three months after getting married, found out my wife was pregnant and she was on the pill.
Mazel dog.
Yeah, so I'm guessing that the chemo actually turbocharged things.
Did you call the doctors and go, guess what? That's
Well,
what.
I couldn't track down the doctor because he's like a hot shot, so he has his entourage, and those are the ones I dealt with the most. So when I first let somebody know, they're like, "Really?" Like, yeah, make sure you put that in my chart.
Yes, because I was gonna ask you about that. I didn't. I was gonna ask you like about that, like if like what, and you answered it already. So when they took the tumor out, they removed it and they said you're probably never gonna be able. You're probably never gonna be able to have kids with that like what would that what was the point that you said you were angry and you said you met the social worker? Was there a point before the social worker where you said, okay, I'm gonna snap myself out of this?
Yeah,
Like,
there actually was. That's a very good question. When I got the word that I was in remission, the doctor told me, all right, we got your blood test back, cancer's gone. And that was the first time anybody had ever told me that. So when I was driving home, I was just thinking about, okay, I gotta get back to life, coupon in my hand. What do I do with this? And I made a promise to myself at that moment that I was never going to be that helpless again, where I felt like I couldn't do anything, where I was a total victim to my circumstances. So that absolutely began the process where I realized that every problem I came up with, everything that I faced, if there appeared to be no solution, I was going to relentlessly pursue it until I found one. I committed to resourcefulness essentially. I was going to find it somewhere. And keep in mind, this was back in 1988 before the internet. So I spent a lot of time at the library. I spent time talking to people, meeting new folks who knew stuff I didn't. So I started asking a lot of questions. And when the internet surfaced, man, that was like nirvana for an information nerd.
Absolutely.
It still is because there's hardly anything that I can't find an answer for. And with the emergence of Facebook and Twitter, now it's just a matter of making a post and I get responses from all over the world. And that's probably the best encyclopedia there is just reaching out to your community.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head right there, my friend. Now
and
we're kind of, I mean, we could be talking to you. I think we'll definitely have you on again because there's so much there that we could be talking about. So many different avenues to go down. But I mean, we're kind of up against the clock here. But before we go, first I wanted to ask Brian if there's anything like any words of wisdom, anything that you want to tell our listeners out there that you have that just you gotta get off your chest.
Well, not so much off my chest, except for this excessive weight around my belly, which I'm working on. But one thing that I didn't put out there that I talk about a lot on social media is I was recently diagnosed with a physical condition. It's called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And what it essentially comes down to is that the collagen that makes up my connective tissue sucks. It's not doing its job. So what that results in is very loose joints because the collagen in my ligaments and my tendons is very weak. So my joints are slack, they're wobbly. It's hard to maintain my balance. It's hard to walk long distances. I have pain every day to varying degrees, especially the nerve pain, which just makes your joints and your limbs on fire. But again, when I first heard about it, I did my little grieving, thinking about the repercussions. But then I went back to my default setting, which is all right, now I'm going to have to learn to be more resourceful. I need to learn what's available for this condition. I found an online community, I found the right doctors. They've taught me new information, exercises, tools that I need to use. And there's one quote that really just help me see this as an empowering situation. And Mike, you are an absolutely spectacular role model for this. And the line is, we all do the best we can with the body we're given.
excellent.
That's
Yeah.
that's very
So
powerful.
no matter what it is, if you happen to be overweight, if you happen to be paraplegic, one of my good friends, it was paralyzed in his early 20s. Mike, you had that challenge during the birth process that created these challenges in your life. But look at what you're doing. Say, yeah, you have these challenges, but ultimately you find the resources in the form of people, the different equipment that's out there, and you kick butt with the gifts that you have in spite of whatever these challenges are.
Thank you, sir.
Amen, brother. Now, if someone's listening, they're like, you know what, I want more of Brian King. How do they get in touch with you? Where can they look for you? Where can they find you? Give us a little commercial.
best place they can go is to my main website, which is my name, brianraymondking.com. And that's the hub of everything I do, because I have 3 websites. And you'll find links to my articles, my programs, my podcasts, my social media. So you'll be able to connect with me everywhere I exist from that one location.
That's a nice hub. It's kind of like how United is here in Chicago, Mike. It's the hub.
Yes,
It's the hub of everything.
Yes.
Well, Brian, thank you so much for being on our show. We are, I think we've really blessed our listeners today with your knowledge and intellect.
Thank you,
It's
sir.
an absolute pleasure, guys.
Mike, you got any parting words for us?
I would just like to say thank you to our guests and thank you to our listeners. I hope they helped. And as always, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the GIMP Show podcast at handicapthis.com.